Well, good morning again, everybody. Welcome to the Team Excellence call. It's so good to hear your voices. I just love the chatter before the call. You know that. And I often comment on how when the lines go silent, I feel like I'm out here on an island. So thank you for speaking up and showing up. And, it's always an honor to be on this side of the call with you. And I just, my hat goes off to you. I just can't say it enough because you guys are just so committed to plugging in day after day and year after year. And, of course, I can't overlook Omar and his vision for this call and for keeping this thing going just year after year. What a commitment, what a leader he is. So I thank him for that. As you know, I'm calling in from beautiful Virginia, and, we've been spoiled a little bit the last couple of weeks. I keep teasing about global warming, but today it's a little colder. It was about 42 degrees this morning, very windy, so it felt colder than that. But it's a good reminder to me that winter isn't quite over yet, but it's always a beautiful day anywhere we're calling from in any condition if we make it that way, right? So you guys know I'm generally inspired with a message based on something going on in life, and today's no different. I'm going to be chasing a different kind of rabbit today, and as usual, I'm hoping I can drive home a message that will help you in your journey through this business and also through this life. I was inspired by something that I actually shared on Facebook, I think yesterday, and it's not a news story, but one that just resonates within me when I see it. It's a story about a man, a detective, and he not married and had no children. He volunteers at a recreational center for underprivileged youth, for boys. And so that automatically gets my heart. Lots and lots of kids with unstable backgrounds were in this environment. He works with a lot of kids, but two brothers captured his heart. Kids of all ages, all shapes, all sizes, all colors, but these two brothers seemed to capture him. So one day when they didn't show up, he was concerned for them. Another day went, they didn't show up, so he went looking for them. And when he found them, they were in pathetic circumstances in a foster home, and he took immediate action. He took action to become their foster father, and he eventually adopted them. Very, very moving story, especially for a single mom who was forever on the lookout, for good character, good coaches, good examples, especially for my boys. So it really touches me. But again, that center was filled with other boys, and all of them in need of TLC and mentoring. So why these two boys? Why? Because they refused to get left behind. They clung to this man, and he could see it. They were searching for a better life. When he spoke, they listened. And when he coached, they performed. And he could just see that in them, and that drew his heart. But something within them caused them to fight for a different life. He saw it, and he stepped up. So the title of the message today is No Man or Woman Left Behind. Every living thing in one way or another is taught the basics of life. To animals, it's the basics of survival before they go off into the world or into the wilderness on their own, right? For example, a bird, it will feed its young in the nest and kind of keep them all, under its wing and keep them warm and safe and everything. But at some point when the time is right, that mother bird forces the bird out of the nest, and it's either fly or flop. Okay, I don't know if you've ever witnessed it or not, but it's really cool to see this baby bird who's never tested those wings before leave the nest, and they learn how to fight and they win. If you've ever seen a dog wean their puppies, then you know that she'll force herself away from them, kind of pushing them away, and lead them into another source of food and water instead. The dogs in the wild are taught, they teach their young to hunt for the food, for survival. So nature seems to work things out, and barring some inability, injury, disability, for instance, no living creature is ever left behind. To people, we begin, hopefully, with a good parent or two, and those parents will teach their kids the way. And many children aren't as fortunate. Some get left behind and some get abused, and that's a whole different story for a whole other day. But these children grow up, and I'm one of them, by the way, and they have no choice on whether or not they continue to get left behind. They have to move on. Humans are the only creatures given an intellect, regardless of how you feel about your family, Pat. I'm sorry if I'm stepping on your toes. They don't have an intellect. They don't have the ability to reason like their human friends do. And so, we humans have a choice whether or not we get left behind. As humans, most of us don't have that survival instinct at all until we're forced into an unfortunate situation that separates the men from the boys, so to speak, a sink or swim sort of scenario. In that case, survival instincts will kick in for most. I often share the fact that I'm grateful for the crazy childhood I had. I mean, it was just unbelievable, right? I'm sure there are people on the phone that had worse, but it was crazy, and I was forced into survival mode. And those instincts and just pure strong will prepared me to raise the family of 4 on my own, by myself with no participation or no compensation from their father. Life prepared me for that. But when faced with my circumstances, I still had a choice. I could choose the path that so many single moms choose, unfortunately. So many get overwhelmed, they throw in the towel, and then they look for someone else to help them with housing and food, and they just surrender to their circumstances, and they allow someone else to tend to the basic needs. I could have gone that route. I could have made excuses, and I could have thrown in the towel. I could have told myself that I'm not equipped to do this job. I can't feed 4 kids. I mean, I have no college education, et cetera. I could have told myself that, but I refused to get left behind, just like those 2 boys that we started this story with. But what happens in a different kind of journey? What happens, for instance, in our business, when you embark on a journey to have your own business, to build your own future, to build your own wealth, and you've never been down this road before? It's your choice whether or not you get left behind. In our business, no man, no woman is left behind to figure things out on their own or how to survive. They choose to be left behind if they refuse to look for leadership or they refuse to follow leadership. Some of us expect others to do the work for us, and these people will circle around a little bit looking for that life raft of success that doesn't exist, by the way, and these people get discouraged and they quit long before they can see their success. But the business didn't fail them. The business didn't leave them behind. They got left behind by choice. And some of us will look upward for leadership. And unfortunately, we all know this, that it often doesn't exist upward, right? And they'll circle around and around, and they whine and they complain, and, they say they can't possibly survive because they don't see the leadership that they were looking for, as if it's somebody else's fault that they don't have the mentoring they need. But the leadership hasn't left them behind. They chose to be left behind. So, but what if people like me, left behind with no support, right? What if I just circled around and I blame the condition of my life on the father of my children? What if I refused to get up and lead my family and fight for a different life? And I think you know the answer to that. I didn't have an example to follow, by the way. Nobody there to show me the real way. It was a dysfunctional upbringing. I didn't have that. But I think of the words today, and although I didn't know John Maxwell, who he was at the time, these words are powerful words. He says, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So in that time of my life, I spent time with the kinds of moms I wanted to be, and I mirrored what they did. I didn't look up, and spend time with other miserable single moms so we could complain about our ex-husbands and cry in our coffee together. I looked for people who were succeeding so I could follow their lead. Nobody in anything has to be left behind. We choose to be left behind. Our business is overflowing with amazing leaders. Some have climbed the ranks and they're immensely successful because of their hard work. And, it's interesting. One component to the Living Waters Farm event we had last fall, and you may not know this, is one was that I asked the leaders, would you speak on what you normally speak on to build the business in one part of your talk, and on the other part, give us your heart, man. It's testimony time. I wanted them to share their journey because I'd had some conversation with some. I knew that there were many more hard knocks than most people were aware of. So I wanted them to share their journey, where they'd been, and what they were going through when they found our business. And some people were shocked. They were shocked at the journey, but most were actually emotional to hear the trials and the tribulations that these leaders endured before they became who they are today. And although that was months ago, I still hear people talking about how they were impacted by those words, And you know what else I hear? I hear them say, if they can do it, I can do it. The leaders that you see today had the same challenges that you have, and many of them had circumstances far worse than yours. They succeeded not because they had an advantage, like so many people like to believe. They didn't succeed because, they had a big, long list of people to talk to, and they didn't succeed because they're lucky. They didn't succeed because they're more educated or more experienced than you are. It wasn't just that they were determined to succeed. It was also that they refused to be left behind. They needed an answer in their life. They saw the opportunity before them, and they were unstoppable. They refused to get left behind. So how about you? There is an abundant supply of good leadership out there. Some are at the top, and that's obvious. But there are plenty of other people who are just natural-born leaders all around you that you could easily mirror. Just like those boys in the recreation center, they saw leadership and a way to fight, against being left behind, and they latched on to it with respect and with honor. Like my life, looking for the kind of women I wanted to become. In our business, there are lots and lots of people you can mirror if you refuse to get left behind. And again, there are plenty of natural-born leaders. There are some that aren't ranked up yet. You might meet an amazing 3A that's just a natural-born leader. Maybe that's one of the 5 people you need to be surrounding yourself with again. So, again, John Maxwell says you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Consider who you're spending your time with. Are you spending time with others who refuse to get left behind? Again, there's no excuse for any man or woman getting left behind unless we choose to be. A mentor is always out there, one you can respect and one you can learn from. And most of the time, no matter what line they're in or where they are, if it's possible, they're going to be willing to be there to help you. It makes no difference, where that mentor is. No more than it mattered where my mentors came from that showed me the way in parenting. I have 5 sisters, and I didn't go to any one of those to mirror, because they weren't going in the direction I wanted to go to with my family. So I found them on my own. And the same is true in this business. It may not be that it's up. It may not be in your line at all, but we're all in the same business, guys. There's got to be, a mentor or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 that you could be spending your time with. So many people choose to not move forward, and they're getting left behind. And that's just a shame because there's no excuse for it. Here's a simple reminder, and it's said with all due respect. If you aren't attempting to move forward, if you aren't doing your part, it may look like there's nobody there for you. But truth be told, if you're not moving, if you're not trying, if you're not like those 2 boys just longing for a different way and looking for that leadership and respecting it, you can't expect people to stop or even slow down to spend the time with you that you're wanting because you're not moving. One sure way of getting, quote-unquote, left behind is if you do nothing, right? We read about so many people in life who overcame the most amazing adversities to become successful heroes. The odds were against most of them that you read about. They could have been left behind. Many of them didn't have good parenting, didn't have good leadership, started out on the wrong side of life. They didn't have support, or any reason on the surface to guarantee that they would succeed at all. But they refused to get left behind. And they worked harder than most people are willing to work to find their success. So do you whine that you're being left behind? Do you feel like things are moving faster than you are? Do you think that you don't have leadership? Do you tell yourself you don't have support or somebody to take every single step you think they ought to be taking? Perhaps you struggle with your ego, the way I did, honestly, and you refuse to follow leadership. You refuse to be mentored by it. Maybe you can't humble yourself yet enough to say, I'm going to do what they tell me to do because that's working, right? So although as parents, for instance, our role is to raise up healthy, well-rounded, competent people, what we're really all about is preparing them to go leave the nest and to live a productive, good life, right? But it's up to them. Once they leave the nest, it's up to them whether they get left behind in the journey or not. The same is true for our business. You've got people there that can prepare you, equip you to show you something you can mirror and respect, but it's up to you whether you get left behind in that journey or not. So, again, I have to ask, are you spending time with people who refuse to quit and who will persevere against all odds? Or are you spending time with people who choose to get left behind and who offer every imaginable excuse for why they aren't successful? You think about those 2 boys. Here they were. We know how kids influence kids, right? So you have these 2 boys in the midst of all these other troubled kids. I'm sure that, things that go on are just unimaginable, right? But these 2 boys didn't surrender to that environment. They looked for where they wanted to go. So it is the company that we keep, and it's the price that we pay. It's what we do to make this business work for us. Life is always a choice. So if you're scratching your head and you're trying to figure out this business, it's just not working for you yet, or if you've stalled out, you just can't figure out how to get moving again, or if you're just beginning, you're starting out, and you really don't know what you need to do to succeed, I assure you, you're in a business where nobody gets left behind unless they choose to be left behind. There are plenty of people out there, ready to help show you the way if you're just willing, if you're like those boys, looking up with respect, looking for that leadership, and you're willing to take the steps yourself. So just tell yourself, I refuse to get left behind. You're going to see obstacles. That's life. We're going to see setbacks, and we're going to see things that, mistakes that we make, if you will, but there's no such thing as failure. We have to just keep getting up and keep getting on and keep moving, right? Refuse to get left behind. Again, these are very, very exciting times in our business. You can see it all over the place, from our company having a little growing pains to seeing that the most geography taken up in a retail store is a bottled water. We are at the right place at the right time, and there is going to be no excuse for you to get left behind unless you choose to get left behind. So I hope that helps you today. I hope you'll remember that as you're struggling. We all struggle, and we all have days of doubt, and we all have days of turmoil, but the bottom line is when the rubber meets the road, you have to ask yourself, am I going to quit? Am I going to keep going on? And, because you do not have to get left behind in this amazing journey unless you choose to. So you guys go make it a great day. I'll see you at the top. See you next week. Make a best day. Bye-bye.